It's really great to start having some inclusion of our new Australians in the discussions around population, migration and mobility, particularly in regional areas. I'm going to actually discard quite a lot of the notes that I put up because I just want to pick up on some of the things that previous speakers spoke about and basically give you a few case studies of the learnings that we have learnt, the different ways of relocating and resettling new Australians of both refugee and migrant background because they have different experiences. The Margaret Orr Centre was established in 1979 as part of the Southeast migration to Australia after the Vietnam or during the Vietnam War. It has had offices in Port Augusta, an office in Whyalla for a very long period of time while migrants went there when the steelworks were actually in their huge development. It auspices the Multicultural Regional Multicultural Communities Council, whose chair is Peter Piros from the Riverland and Multicultural Forum, and it has held several conferences in Port Lincoln, the Riverland, Mount Gambier, to engage local communities to host and include new arrival of migrants, including those of refugee background. Currently, it has offices in the Riverland, Murray Bridge, for Murraylands, Bordertown, Narracourt and Mount Gambier. And I want to talk about some of those case studies, the way it occurred, why, and what the experiences of those case studies have been, and what do they say to us about the future. As well as having diversity in product, South Australia's growth and engagement globally has depended also on diversity of cultures. You can't, the wine industry, the fruit industry, the fishing industry in Port Lincoln. I saw olive groves and I thought, gee, I'm in Greece, where I came from, up here, that weren't there 20 years ago or so. So the diversity that our client group brings to South Australia is immense in terms of global connection. And just to give you one example, a refugee came off the plane. 2 weeks later, I was with him and had a meeting, and he wanted to know what, and I have no idea, so if anybody in this room knows anything about it, please let me know so I can put him to you. He used to train racehorses in the Middle East. And he knows people that want to buy and help train racehorses from Australia because they say that the Australian horses are really fantastic. And I didn't have any way of working, or my staff didn't have any way of saying to him, well, we just don't know who to go to. And these are the things that come at us all the time, so that's an offside. I will give you some examples of the work that we have been doing. 10 years ago, the first Karen Burmese or Myanmar refugees arrived in Mount Gambier. It was a social, it was a social planning exercise, and it took about 3 or 4 years to prepare for their arrival. That preparation included looking at employment to ensure that they could, after gaining language training, they could actually go into some sort of employment, whether it was seasonal or whether it was full-time or part-time. It looked at local area coordination of bringing the agencies that were required to support the settlement together. The TAFE SA obviously was one of the major partners, The RDO, local government was another partner, and all the health and other agencies. So it required a settlement agency that could coordinate that process and bring them together, and also support those new arrivals to actually access, not only access, but actually get outcomes from working with those agencies. We now have over 1,500 people living in and around Mount Gambier that actually came as refugees. They have settled, they have bought houses, they are employed in various industries. Thank goodness for the foundation, SA Uni and foundation courses there, where people don't have to send their children back to Adelaide, but they can actually do some of the courses in those regional areas. We have a health system down there that has actually engaged with that community, and therefore had learnings and is able to better look after the community. So it's not about the lack of resources in country areas that we have found, it's about the coordination of the lack of resources, of those resources. So whatever resources, intellectual or physical that they are, it's about how do we get them together and how do we actually look at challenges and resolve them together. So it's cross-agency coordination, and it's having local government particularly, and some of the industry groups and other key providers working very, very closely together. The school system, for example, in Mount Gambier, with the New Arrivals program. So that was an exercise, and we can actually say that only about 5% of the population that we built up over the last 10 years in Mount Gambier has shifted. Even though there's been various times when, they have not been employed as well, because they've integrated into the community, because their community has accepted them. Now, that is really rather strange, because they came as quite illiterate from refugee camps in Myanmar or in Thailand. They are Myanmar. They actually, some of them don't know a lot of English. And yet they're very productive, industrious people, and in terms of social capital, they have actually set up a number of small businesses, which I won't go into. The other example where we came in after the fact was Naracoorte Lucendale Council and that area, where in fact a number of small migrants, refugees from Woomera, from refugee camps in South Australia, decided they wanted a quiet place, they wanted a country place, and actually went, 4 or 5 families went to Naracoorte. Those people, those few families, because they integrated into the local community, they became Rotary members, they worked well with council, were able to attract now probably over 500 workers that work in the vineyards, in TIS and in other small holdings, as well as developing enterprises themselves. And they say that every 10 families creates a small business in a country town. So it's not just bringing expertise from overseas, but there is expertise here, and the expertise here is not just the established Australians. It's about 1,000 to 1,500 refugees that we bring in a year, and it's about 2,000 to 2,500 overseas skilled or sponsored or family members that are brought in a year. And although all of those are not adults and not working, it is very, very important to understand that these are Australians. They are new Australians, and they have brought in some assets that we badly need to incorporate into whatever innovation and development we are doing. The border town experience is another one where it was almost impossible for the food factory there in the past to retain workers. Couldn't do it. Okay? And I call that a little bit about learning about cultural competence. And cultural competence is about working with others who have a knowledge of the area like ourselves, and getting together in partnership with the Tatiara Council and working out solutions of how to do it. I don't think that there is an issue that can't be resolved. It's a challenge, and a challenge can always be resolved. We came in when about 180, mainly Soul men of refugee background, were brought in to work in the factory where they required it within a 2-month period. It was the most amazing feat of the land agent in the town finding 80 houses in and around the district. It was easy. We just all got together and did the work. The council bringing in all the providers, ourselves working with JBS to look at some of their HR practices to support people so that they could retain them. It does require settlement agencies, local government and business to work together as a team to see and respect each other's skills and expertise and knowledge in order to be able to ensure the success of any innovation or any challenge. And across those towns, we have found different ways of dealing with that. Our most recent pilot is with Thomas Foods, Mintrack at the national level, and obviously the rural city of Murray Bridge, who we've had a long relationship with and have tried various experiments of trying to get migrants from Adelaide to go and stay there because the housing is cheaper, because there's work there and whatever. But unfortunately, it's very, very close to Adelaide. And there are ways of dealing with that, and in a few months' time, we should be able to come out with some learnings from the pilot that we've got. We've already placed a number of workers there who have shifted to Murray Bridge. We want to increase that area because we know that local government is very, very supportive. We know that the industries there require, labour, and that there is a workforce there. So I guess from our point of view, our work is to actually provide pre-vocational training, including white card for construction industry, community services, certificates and whatever. But the biggest task we have is to actually get many of you out there to see the client groups that we have as committed, industrious, and probably the innovators of the future in South Australia in terms of what they bring from the countries that they have come from or from their migration experience. If any of you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 opportunities for employment for any of our people, I'm very, very happy for you to get in touch with us. I've put our report into your bags there, so you should be able to read more about us. I do hope, as I said, I do hope that what you will consider is cultural diversity, and what you will consider is some of the assets that we have brought to Australia being utilised as opposed to being left as unemployed people. Thank you.